What it do, citizens of P-Town? You know what this is. Today, this morning, as you can tell based on my hair, I will be reacting to the top movies of UFC fighters. Now, if you've been following MMA and specifically UFC on Twitter, you would recognize this account, Alex Behunin. He has been doing this humanizing athletes series for a long time. Go ahead and check out his accounts. Follow him. This is his Instagram. He has a Twitter too. Check out all those links. All the screenshots I'm pulling from this video are going to be from his account. So I decided I haven't really seen this before in which people would react to UFC fighters' favorite movies specifically. So I decided why not take the opportunity to combine two things that I love and posted about on this channel, UFC and movies, and kind of react to what movies UFC fighters like and kind of give my perspective. I'm not supposed to be this huge, big professional movie critic they're supposed to take seriously. This is just coming from an opinion of someone who loves movies more than UFC. And I think it should be interesting to find out what movies UFC fighters like. So yeah, let's get into it. We're gonna start off with a we're gonna start off with this category of common favorite movies of UFC fighters. So these are movies that multiple UFC fighters picked, and we can kind of get a general sense of what's a common favorite movie. Starting off, we got two lightweight fighters in the UFC, Mateus Gamrot and Matt Favola. They both put Rocky Four, and you know what? I agree. I think Rocky Four is probably the best Rocky movie, and so I think this is valid. And yeah, fighters like the Rocky Four. They like their fighting. Shouldn't be a surprise. Moving on, we have our current UFC middleweight champion alongside ranked welterweight Gilbert. Or I'm sorry, I forgot to say Dricus Du Plessis, our current middleweight champion, and Gilbert Burns right there. They both put Unbroken as their favorite movie, so that's pretty interesting. I also am pretty sure that they are the only two they put Unbroken. But I guess UFC fighters like Unbroken. It doesn't matter if you're a South African or Brazilian. That's a few UFC fighters' favorite movie. All right, we move on. We had two fighters that put Inglorious Bastards. We have featherweight Jack Jenkins and bantamweight Cameron Simon, Dricus Du Plessis' training partner. Apologies for the screenshot quality. I just kind of blew it up. I didn't want to just type everything out. These are, like I said, these are screenshots from Alex's account. Go ahead and check it out. But yeah, Glorious Bastards. I mean, I think it's better than Pulp Fiction. I think it's not only a better pick in terms of taste. I also just think it's the better movie. So yeah, cool. Glorious Bastards. I do. You look at Jack Jenkins. He does look like the type to like Tarantino, um, assuming wise. So yeah, that's another interesting one. What do we got here? We got lightweight Trevor Peek alongside ranked UFC middleweight Martin Vittori. They both put Lawless as their favorite movie, and when you watch Trevor Peek fight, it shouldn't be surprised that he picked a movie like Lawless. But I also like learning about Martin Vittori. Like, I don't think he's the most interesting or entertaining fighter or personality. But whenever you do kind of learn a bit about him, it just seems pretty interesting. Like, okay, he's got a favorite movie, Lawless. There you go. Another one, we got three fighters here. We have former UFC champion Brandon Moreno. Apologies if you can't see the favorite movie right there, if I'm blocking it. But either way, we got Brandon Moreno, Mario Batista, and Charles Jourdain. They all put Troy. So it's not surprising that UFC fighters would love the movie Troy. It's an epic. It's about fighting and putting your heart out there. I think there are better historical war epics than Troy, to be honest. So, I think there are better movies out there. With that said, a better one, speaking of that, is Gladiator. And we have, oh, apologies. There we go. Three fighters that put Gladiator. We have Chris Curtis. We have current bantamweight champion Merab Dvalishvili, and former title challenger Thiago Santos, in which all three of them put Gladiator. I think that's a better movie to pick. If we're talking epics, if we're talking about movies with fighting and just kind of putting your heart out there, I think Gladiator is a good pick. And, not surprised that a few UFC fighters would choose it. And I'm not surprised that these fighters chose it either. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. Let's see, what else we got? The Godfather, classic pick. There's two reactions that you can have to a person saying that their favorite movie is The Godfather. It's like, on one hand, it's like, can we get something interesting? You know what I mean? It's like everybody knows The Godfather. Can we get like something new? Does it even count? But with that said, it's also The Godfather. You know what I mean? Like I think it's if you like the movie in isolation, like everybody understands that. If you have that as your favorite movie, that's kind of like you kind of wonder how many movies that they've seen. But either way, uh, interesting picks. And let's see, is this the last one of this multiple picks category? Yes. So we have three people who put Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas, as their favorite movie. We got on the left, my boy Calvin Cater. On the right, Jack Della Maddalena. And on the bottom, I believe it's Fareed Basharat. Put Goodfellas. You know, I love Scorsese and I love Goodfellas, but also it also is kind of like The Godfather, where it's like if you get something interesting, you know what I mean? But I am biased towards Scorsese and I do love Goodfellas, but so interesting picks. All right. So now as far as our upcoming categories, we have fighters who put favorite movies that align with my personal taste, movies that I agree with, or maybe even some of my all-time favorites. So let's get started. We have Steve Ersteg, Astro Boy, put Disney's Hercules. I think that's a little bit of a surprise. But I mean, looking at him, I didn't think he would like Disney's Hercules, but I think it's a good movie. I think it's a banger. Definitely one of well, it's so I think it's gotten to the point where it's so underrated that it's like properly rated, in which it seems like everybody loves Hercules. But yeah, great movie. We have current UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Behunin, who put the first Spider-Man. I personally prefer the second one, like many people. But honestly, can't go wrong with Spider-Man. And it is a bit of a different pick if he's picking the first one, because I feel like most people love the second one the best. So yeah, good stuff. We got a Cub Swanson right here with Nacho Libre. There are two reactions that people might have to Nacho Libre. Um, Either it's just an ass movie with just lowbrow humor and it's just ridiculous why Jack Black is playing a Mexican character, and then there's the other half, like among the camp that Cub and myself are in, where I genuinely think that Nacho Libre is one of my favorite comedies of all time. So I'll put that out there. I love Nacho Libre. Great pick. We have Michelle Pajeda, who put Akira as his favorite movie. Now, it's not really surprising nowadays when people like anime. Anime is not obscure anymore. That has long been the case where anime has not been obscure. But at the same time, when it comes to UFC fighters, it always gives a reaction to the anime fans out there, like, oh, you like anime? Okay, that's great. And Akira is a good pick. I would have to say. I think that it's one of the few movies that we've seen before the 2000s or the 90s that have been of these picks right here. But yeah, so a good choice. Next up, we have Benson Henderson, Bendo, who's crazy picture right here, but his favorite movie is The Princess Bride, and once again, not really an obscure movie at all. It's very beloved, very quoted. I personally love this movie. I think it's great, to be honest, and I think it's a little surprising that someone like Bendo would like this movie. But yeah, Princess Bride. Next up, we have Kung Fu Panda. We're gonna see a bit of a lack of martial arts movies on this list. We're gonna see a few, but not a lot of them. Kung Fu Panda is low key one of the best martial art movies. So I'm honestly okay with this. And also, like I said, we're not gonna see as much martial art movies, and you'd be surprised considering that these are fighters. But interesting observation. And yeah, who we got next? We got Marcus McGee. Apologies for the text, but if you look on that fourth line right there, you squint really hard. It says Jackie Chan's Drunken Master. That's my boy right here. All right, I'm a fan now. Drunken Master is. I'm assuming we're talking about the second one because that's the most popular one. It is the better one. I'm gonna assume it's talking about that movie. Jackie Chan's Legend of the Drunken Master or Drunken Master 2 is in my top 10 of all time. Maybe outside of my top 5, very close. And not only is this going to be one of the few martial art movies, if not at all, that we see on this list, I think it just shows that Marcus McGee has taste for me. Because even if it was the first Drunken Master movie, which I don't think is as good as the second one, it's in the 70s. So it's still not only going to demonstrate, McGee kind of standing out for going back further when it comes to movies, but also that he's a martial arts movie fan, like a genuine one. And either way, he can't miss with either of those two movies. I think this is a great pick. Next up, we have two banger picks. Curtis Blades with Jurassic Park and Princess Mononoke. I mean, he knocked it out of the park with these two. I mean, Jurassic Park is in my top 20, arguably top 15 of all time, and Princess Mononoke is my number 3. I mean, great picks, man. Great picks. And also, I'm surprised they likes Princess Mononoke. I mean, once again, I'm not saying that anime is obscure or like little niche. Um, but isn't that surprising to find out that he loves Princess Mononoke just like me? I mean, I love to have a conversation with him. Great stuff. Robert Whitaker put Lord of the Rings. Good stuff. I'm curious to see which one is his favorite. I wonder if he's the type to like actually watch them all in one day because he loves them all so much and can't pick a favorite. You know what I mean? They're not really three separate movies to him. Or maybe he has a definitive favorite, like he's strong on Return of the King or strong on Fellowship, or if he's different, the Two Towers. But yeah, Robert Whitaker loves Lord of the Rings. Next up, we have Demetrius Johnson, who put Alien franchise and the Predator franchise as his favorite movies. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's nice to enjoy an entire franchise, and it shows that he is invested in movies to a certain extent. Some of the movies from both franchises aren't as good as others, so I'm very curious to see which ones are his favorites or his least favorites, but pretty good ones. I prefer the Alien franchise, and I've seen 3 of them. So there you have it. Let's see. Are we on to the next category? Yes. Okay. So now we're going to get into a bit of roast territory where I might critique their taste. Maybe I just want more elaboration. Once again, this is all jokes. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. And I'm not supposed to be this critic taken seriously. But I am just going to give my own perspective on it based on my own taste and exploration of movies. So starting off, he just fought Brandon Moreno. We have Amir Albazi and that fourth line right there who put The Matrix. Look, there's nothing wrong with liking The Matrix individually and loving that movie. I think that as far as creativity and originality and iconicity, it deserves all of its hype. With that said, I like favorite movie of all time. It definitely comes off as like normie taste. I gotta be honest, or like someone who hasn't seen a lot of action movies. Like I said, I think The Matrix is really good, and I think it's fine to enjoy them. Um, on its own. But yeah, your favorite movie, really? Like let's explore a little bit, man. Like I mean, have you seen Reloaded? In my opinion, Reloaded is better. So I mean that. But anyways, Mirabazi, interesting picks. We got Jailton Almeida, UFC heavyweight, and Johnny Walker, UFC light heavyweight, who both put the Avengers. Now, I'm not here to hate on Marvel movies. I think Avengers is a very good movie. But also, Infinity War is just right there, man. Like, Infinity War is the best Avengers movie. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. All right. Don't try to convince me that it's Endgame. All right, just because it has the best moments. Infinity War is where it's at. So, interesting picks. Um, Next up, we have Jun Park, one of my favorite UFC middleweights, and Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, welterweight. They both put, if you could read right there, they both put Marvel movies, and D-Rod specifically put any Marvel movie. I really enjoy them all. Here's the thing, man. Once again, not here to hate on Marvel movies. I just really want to know, like, if they had a favorite, which one would they would pick? Because I feel like I would learn a lot more about their movie taste if they just picked a favorite. And I get D-Rod's position of not being able to choose one, but I think that it is more indicative of someone's taste whether or not they picked Captain America: The Winter Soldier or Thor: Ragnarok. Those are two very different movies showing very different tastes. Or even if one of them just said all the X-Men movies, it's like okay, that's a bit more interesting. So I feel like I haven't really learned much about their movie taste just coming off of Marvel movies, and I like to know that. So just wanted to point that out. Next, we have Sean Woodson, UFC featherweight, who's in a bit out of a pretty decent win streak and a slightly longer unbeaten streak. He put Rush Hour as his favorite movie. Now, here's my thing with Rush Hour. I'm a fan of the Rush Hour movies. I've seen the first two. I think that they're great. They're fun to watch with friends. Very entertaining stuff. But with that said, as someone who has seen a lot of martial art movies and just a lot of Jackie Chan movies alone, I can't put Rush Hour anywhere like above the middle point when it comes to Jackie Chan's filmography because as far as comedy, as far as martial arts fights and action, as far as stunt work, he has just done so much better before than Rush Hour. And in the first Rush Hour, there's a really cool bus set piece, a little bus stunt that Jackie Chan does. And when I'm rewatching that in Rush Hour, I just feel like rewatching Police Story that had the infinitely better bus set piece, bus. It wasn't an opener, but yeah, stunt involving a bus. And so yeah, I just couldn't put Rush Hour as my favorite movie. With that said, despite Jackie Chan's stacked filmography, Rush Hour still stands out as one of his most notable movies. You know, primarily because of the interracial comedic crossover that resonates with a lot of people. It's reminiscent of those movies that just won't get made nowadays. So I still think Rush Hour is good. I'm still a fan of the movies, but I also wouldn't put it as my favorite. I could not. I could not. All right, we move on to some people I'm disappointed in. Drew Dober, formerly ranked at lightweight, he put The Matrix or Fight Club as his favorite movie. Now, I got to repeat, liking these movies individually is totally fine. I'm not critiquing that sense of taste. But to have that as your favorite movies, like those are bot picks. Like those are bot picks. I mean, Drew Dober looks like he was crafted in the image of Greek gods, and yet with these two picks, he sounds like every other white dude at my high school. You know what I mean? They either had The Matrix or Fight Club as their favorite movie. It's like, come on, man, let's explore a little bit. Let's explore. You know what I mean? But you know, all good, all jokes. Shout out to Drew Dober. Let's see who else do we got. All right, we have an interesting one right here. Mauricio Hua, aka Shogun Hua, put The Last Samurai as his favorite movie. Now, I'm gonna say something here. I'm gonna say it. Isn't it interesting how a Italian Brazilian man who received controversy during his early Pride FC years for taking on a Japanese name? Isn't it interesting how his favorite movie is about a white guy taking on becoming a samurai? Like, look, all, I mean, no disrespect to Shogun Hua. He is a legend of the sport, an absolute savage in his prime. But this tracks, okay? There's a pattern right here. Like, this makes sense. And I don't mean it in a good way, okay? All right? Just want to throw that out there. Next up, we have Tyson Pedro, who recently retired. Really entertaining light heavyweight when he won. Always quick finishes. For his favorite movie, he put, I Cannot Choose, I'm a Movie Head. I'm a little disappointed, man. I'm a little disappointed because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And so I have not learned anything from your movie taste with this response. Okay, I cannot latch on to any movie that you like and believe that you're a movie head. All right. If anything, I would like to hear. Once again, I understand not being able to pick a favorite, but I'd rather hear of a favorite so that way I could just think, okay, Tyson Pedro is a big movie head, and despite seeing so many movies, this is his favorite. I think that I would learn more about him if you picked that. But until then, I don't know anything about your movie taste, man. I really don't. So a little disappointed. Also disappointed in Tatsuo Taira, who is one of one of my favorite fighters, easily one of my favorite UFC flyweights, who put The Hangover as his favorite movie. Hangover is good. It's funny, especially when you're stoned or drunk. But also, there are better comedies out there. To be honest, there are better comedies. But I think it could be interesting coming from if if with him watching as a Japanese man and just watching Americans just have this crazy time. I can kind of see that. Okay, next up we have the category of picks that I find interesting, ones that maybe that I don't like align with. Maybe I haven't seen these movies, but I think they're interesting, and I think they're actually good picks or like different picks, and I get to know them more personally. Starting off, we have recently top 5 ranked middleweight Kyle Borhayo, who put Green Street Hooligans, a movie that I've never seen before. All right, early Elijah Wood, it seemed, but cool, a movie I've never seen before. That's great. We like to see it. Next up, we have Angela Hill, who put A Little Shop of Horrors. Okay, we seldom see horror movies throughout all these submissions, so it's nice to see some different tastes for once. We have Vicente Luque, who put Toy Story and Tokyo Drift on there, which is just, I think, a little surprising. Not surprising that he likes those movies because they're both good movies, but also it's like, Vicente Luque. All right, you like Toy Story and Tokyo Drift. Okay, variety. We love to see it. Different taste. Okay. I think that that's a pretty interesting pick. Next up, we have Ian Gary, who put all the Harry Potter movies, I think that's nice. You know what I mean? To Harry Potter is one of those long-running movie franchises where there isn't really much like infighting in the fan base, like which movie is the best or which movie is the worst. Typically, I know that fans do say that yeah, some movies aren't as good as others, but for the most part, everybody loves all the movies. Everybody likes binging them all at the same time and losing themselves in the world. I think that's a great thing to achieve, not only just as a franchise and all the people who worked on it, as well as the fans themselves who just love them all. I think that's pretty good. Next up, we have Marcin Tybura, who put a Polish comedy called Boys Don't Cry. Now, I have no comments about the movie itself because I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to refer to this later. All right, so keep this in mind. Polish comedy, not in the English language. All right, keep that in mind. I'll reference that later. Okay, so we move on. Let's see. We got Kayla Harris, who put Rocky 3 and Dirty Dancing. And I like it when UFC fighters put more than one movie. I know that they're asked for one, so it's not surprising when they give just one movie. But putting more than one movie shows, like, okay, yeah, most people do have a varied taste in movies. I think this is great. Rocky 3 and Dirty Dancing. I mean, two very different movies, but she seems like a fun person. And I feel like I learned that. All right, cool. Next up, we got Alex Caceres right here. Apologies for the text, but in that fourth line, the movie that he picked is The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, a movie that I've never heard of before. All right, something new, something different. Apparently, this was released in 2009 or 2008, same year as Avatar, which probably is probably why I don't remember this movie. But yeah, okay, pretty cool, cool stuff. Movie I never heard of before. Awesome. Next up, we have a pick that just gave me like total whiplash. Roman Dolidze put his top two favorite movies, The Pianist and My Neighbor Totoro. All right, you take a look at this guy, and you would you ever guess in 100 years that one of this guy's favorite movies is My Neighbor Totoro? I mean, again, anime is not obscure, nor is that movie My Neighbor Totoro. But like to go from The Pianist, a movie about the Holocaust, to My Neighbor Totoro, like that is just um, I'm a fan now. I gotta say, like to look at this like guy and then just look at this unit and be like, oh yeah, he's like, yeah, one of my top two favorite movies is Minor Totoro. I think we can be friends. I think this guy's pretty cool. Next up, we have UFC middleweight Jack Hermanson, who put Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is a good movie, but also I'm very surprised that anybody in the UFC likes this movie. That's just so sensitive and so endearing yet heart wrenching at the same time. Really great stuff. Jack Hermanson, shout out to him. Next up, we have Khalil Roundtree with Okja. Now, when you look at Khalil Roundtree, whose fighting style um, is described in an overused way that he fights like people owe him money, and you try to tell me that his favorite movie is Okja, I wouldn't believe you at first. Now, come to find out that he's actually vegan, it does make sense that he would love a movie like Okja because it is a movie about environmentalism, the food industry, bonding with animals, and that's such. And so, yeah, it probably wouldn't be surprising that a movie like that would resonate with him so much. It's also one of the few movies that Fighters provided that's not in the English language. So once again, keep that in mind. We move on to the penultimate fighter that I'm going to talk about, which is Yuri Prohaska, one of my all-time favorite fighters. He put Lucy as his favorite movie. Now, okay, this is both an eyebrow raiser, yet at the same time it tracks because it probably shouldn't surprise me that Yuri Prohaska, who lives in the middle of nowhere with limited electricity and water, it wouldn't surprise me that he wouldn't know much about movies, and he would just bring up a movie that wasn't really the most well received and not the most talked about since it's been released. But also, it makes sense because Lucy is that movie where Scarlett Johansson's character is unlocking the other 90% of her brain to maximize her potential as a human, and she could do these incredible things when she could unlock her brain. I know that Yuri Prohaska was like watching that movie and he was just writing notes. He's like, yes, yes, I will do this because like he just locks himself in a room for 4 days straight with no food and water to like overcome his demons. He would definitely practice the shit in Lucy or like undergo the experiment. I haven't seen it, but it's just such an eyebrow raiser. Yet it makes sense knowing Yuri Prohaska. Okay, so we have one more fighter to talk about. I've talked about common movies, favorite movies across UFC fighters, UFC fighters that share a little bit of the same taste as me, other fighters that do not. Now, if you were to ask me, what do I think about UFC fighters and their taste in movies? I'd be like, you know, they're working full time. They're dedicating their lives to fighting full time. Maybe that won't be reflective in the movies that they watch. Um, but who do I think is a cinephile? Who do I think is the biggest cinephile on the UFC roster? And maybe you won't see this answer coming if you haven't seen this post already. But my answer, the biggest cinephile on the UFC roster, he just got a lightweight ranking in July. Patty the Patty Bimblet. Patty the Batty Pimblett, I think, is the biggest cinephile in the UFC because he didn't give us not one, not three, but 9 movies to work with. Let's throw them out there: City of God, Godfather Part 1 and 2, Goodfellas, Once Upon a Time in America, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Dark Knight, The Untouchables, and The Prestige. So there's a lot to break down here. I mean, he loves crime movies. Pretty much all but one of these movies are crime movies, or subgenre crime, all but one. But I think he has great taste, and for a few reasons. Let's talk about it. What I was alluding to earlier, uh, language. Very few fighters would put movies not in the English language. Like even Brazilian fighters were put in English movies. Georgian. Et cetera, et cetera. Really, with only a few exceptions, like Marsha Taibura, Khalil Roundtree, Michel Beheda are putting movies that are not in the English language. City of God, right there, is a Brazilian movie in the Portuguese language. It's not an obscure movie. It's considered one of the best Brazilian movies ever made, but that's a movie in another language. The Untouchables, once again, not an obscure movie. I think it's like top 5 highest grossing movies in France in the French language. I would be very surprised, based on the submissions that fighters have had, how many fighters have heard of City of God or The Untouchables. All right, I think that Patty is showing an openness to film and different geographical locations. Like it doesn't matter to him. Another thing, let's see. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Okay, not once again, not an obscure movie. It literally won so many Oscars. But outside of The Godfather, which is like one of the most recognizable movies of all time, nobody else was really picking movies before the 2000s. It would mostly be 2010s, 2000s, occasional 90s and 80s. How often are you seeing fighters pick movies from the 70s or before? Like this is an older movie that Patty's picking that I don't know. I don't know if other fighters have gone back that far. So that's good. I mean, we could keep going. Length. I mean, Godfather Part 1 and 2 are long movies. Um, Dark Knight is a long movie. Once Upon a Time in America is a 4-hour movie. At least the director's cut, the original vision that Sergio Leone had. I'm not trying to take away from other fighters in which just because they don't have a long movie as their favorite mean they're not a movie fan, or if they don't have a movie in a different language other than their own doesn't mean that they're not a movie fan. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if Patty has a 4-hour movie in his top 10, top 9, he is a movie fan. Okay, he is a movie fan. He's not complaining about length, obviously. Okay, you can sometimes tell when people aren't movie fans when they're just like, oh, how long is the movie? Or, oh, they assume that all movies are, 2 hours and longer. But it's like Patty doesn't care. All right, he's probably seen this movie multiple times, a 4-hour movie. I genuinely think he is a movie fan, and I feel like I'd have more in common with him than a lot of other fighters, just because I know that he's a cinephile, and I'm more of a cinephile than I am a UFC fan. So I feel like in that way, we share a lot in common. I'd like to see what other movies he likes too. So yeah, the most varied, and it is a little unfair to compare him because he did give 9 over the average 1 that other people gave, but I think that does show that he can't pick a favorite movie. So he's gonna go with 9. So there you have it. That's my reaction to all the UFC fighters' favorite movies. What do you think? Were there any ones that I missed? What do you think of my opinions on these fighters' favorite movies? What are your favorite movies? Go ahead and let me know down below. Thank you all for the support, and thank you for watching, and I'll catch y'all later.